This new router table just completely changed the workflow here in my shop. It could save you a ton of time, a ton of space, and a ton of money. Before I get into the 14 amazing things that this can do, I just want to show it to you in action. Check this out. I am making box joints. And like any router box joint jig, you push the wood through the bit. Except this time, I hit OK on the screen and it moves the fence over the correct amount for the perfect size fingers. This is crazy. This is just one of 14 amazing apps on this machine. Let's be real clear. This is not a CNC. You are not designing files on the computer and uploading them to this machine. There's nothing to upload. Think of the apps as 14 different jigs for your router. It's mind-blowing what this can do. I've said many times in many videos that the router is my least favorite tool. This actually makes the router a lot more approachable. It took a fraction of the time to set up this box joint jig than it would over at the table saw or even using a jig at the router. This is the Next Wave Shark RS1000 Pro. I'm going to show you how I set up the app to make this particular box joint. So here on the home screen, I clicked apps, then I chose box joint, press to run, bit height, I chose 0.5, which is the thickness of my board. I hit OK. Total pin clearance. This is where you can set the tolerance to make the joint looser or tighter. I found that 0.008 works for me. You can use millimeters or inches. Hit OK. Material width, my board is 2 inches. I hit OK. Bit diameter, I got a 0.25 inch bit in there. And then I can run male box joint. Press to run. It'll then tell me it's going to move the fence and bit into position. So I say OK. It moves into position, and now I'm ready to make my cuts. You still do all of the work. This is not a CNC. You are pushing the board through the bit. The brains of the RS1000 is just telling the machine to move the bit up and down and the fence forward and back. Here's the crazy thing. It can move the bit up and down and the fence forward and back while cutting for some pretty crazy applications. We will get to that in a bit. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this thing can do. So now I want to cut a dado on the inside of all these pieces to hold a plywood bottom. No need for tape measures or gauge blocks. So I'm just going to go into apps. I'm going to choose dado cut, press to run, bit height. Let's go 0.25 inches deep. We're going to start our offset and we're going to make that, I measured it, and it is going to be 0.164. That determines how far from the edge that dado is going to be. I will hit OK. Dado width, we're just going to go the width of the bit, so I'm going to put 0.25. OK. Bit diameter, I got a 0.25 bit in there. Run dado cut. Press to run, and it's going to move everything into position. And there we go, a perfectly placed dado. If this was a project I would make over and over again, I can actually save those settings into the machine. Also, you don't have to make your dados the width of your bit. Let's say you got a 1/4 inch bit in there, but you want a 3/4 inch dado. The machine knows that, does the math for you, and will incrementally move the fence over to widen that dado. It's really cool. We haven't even scratched the surface. It also does repeating dados where you set your bit height, you can set your groove count, the spacing between the grooves, the start offset from the edge, and the groove width. And then you tell it your bit diameter, does all the math for you. You run the board through, it moves the fence over, you run the board through again, and you just keep doing that on repeat. Super cool. We haven't even scratched the surface, folks. We haven't even scratched the surface. I get to throw away my biscuit joiner. Let's say we want to join these two boards together. We're going to open up the biscuit slot app, press to run. Starting from the bottom, you choose your speed. That'll make sense here in a little bit. Extra depth, you can give yourself a little tolerance. The start offset from the center of the biscuit to the edge where you want that. The biscuit size, so these biscuits come in different sizes. I have a number 20, so I put that in there. The bit diameter, I have a 5/32 inch bit in there, which is the size of a biscuit. And then you run biscuit slot. I'm going to show you an air cut because it's bonkers how this works. Check this out. I don't have my router on, and I'm going to have the board set back a little bit just so you can see what's happening here. I'm going to hit press to run, It's gonna move everything into position. And watch this. The bit's gonna come up, the fence is going to come in, it's going to cut that slot. The bit is gonna go back down below the table, and we're done. That was a little fast, but we can control the speed of the movement in the settings. For this cut, I do have a stop block set up so both of the boards line up perfectly when it comes time to glue them up. I'm just using a paddle here to hold it down against the table and up against the fence. Get the fuck out of here. What black magic is happening there? And now I'm repeating the same operation on the other board, except this time I'm holding it upright, up against the stop block and the fence. Are you seeing what's happening here? We just made a biscuit slot on a router. And it's freaking perfect. Get out of here. Get out of here. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this thing can do yet. Just you wait. I no longer need my heavy ass dovetail jig. Here in the apps, we're going to choose dovetail half blind, press to run. Tail depth, we're gonna go to 1/4 inch in. The spacing, this is where you choose the tolerance, the tightness of your dovetail. It gives you a recommended starting point for the bit that you're using. There's actually a dedicated app to just figuring out what that tolerance needs to be. Material width, you need to put that in there so it knows how many dovetails to cut. Your bit angle, I'm using a 14-degree bit. Bit diameter, that's the measurement of the top of the bit, shows right there on the photo. Then we got to run our dovetails, and then after that we'll run our dove sockets, and then there's actually one more quick operation we need to run after that. Check this out. So for my tailboard, I have it clamped to my miter fence. I just don't trust myself to hold it steady throughout the entire process. So I'm making each pass, hitting OK on the screen, and it moves the fence over the perfect amount. And then for the socket piece, I'm running each pass until it hits the stop block. I really should have dust collection hooked up here so the chips don't interfere with the cut. I like to live on the edge. It does not seat all the way, so it actually takes one more cut. I gotta remove a little bit of material on the back here with the same bit. That is it. I could probably even decrease the tolerance for a tighter fit there, especially in this poplar. Each wood is going to be different. It actually has a few more dovetail apps built into there. We just did a dovetail half blind. It's also got dovetail sliding, dovetail through, and then a dovetail test fit. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this thing can do. How does it know where the fence is in relationship to the bit? And how does it know the bit height? Because every time you put a bit in the router, it might be a different height. Well, you got a touch plate and you calibrate it every time you put a new bit in. If you're using the apps, you don't even have to use the apps. You could just turn on the router and use it like normal. So I've got my bit below the surface here and I've got the touch plate and I'm going to do the calibration and it's going to move the bit up until it hits the plate. Bam. So now I can do the fence and it's going to move the fence until it hits the bit. Once it does, it knows its relationship to the bit. In the software, you can have the fence at the 0 point of the bit or the front of the bit or the back of the bit, depending on your situation. If that doesn't make any sense, don't worry about it. Doesn't need to make sense. We are going to now make a keyhole. That means it's like a little hole that you can put on the back of a picture frame. And this, once again, I haven't done this. This will be my first time, but this is going to move the fence and the bit at the same time to make this keyhole. This is cool. This is so cool. We're going to open up the keyhole app. You can control the fence speed, the lift speed, where you want the keyhole to start from the edge, the length of the keyhole, the depth of cut, and the bit diameter. This is another application where you hold the board up against the fence and the stop. The bit will plunge into the wood, the fence will move, creating its path. It will go back to its starting position. The bit will pull itself underneath the table and you have a keyhole. So if this screw was into the wall, it would go over that screw and fall down on there and it wouldn't come out. How freaking cool is that? We haven't even scratched the surface of what this can do. This is what it looks like below. It basically looks like a router lift, except it's got some futuristic stuff attached to it. It does not come with the table. I'm using a Craig table. It does come with the router plate, and it dropped right into the Craig table. Up on top, you've seen me use this miter gauge. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the miter gauge. That's an extra add-on. You can make your own, of course, especially if your router has the slots in the front. I highly recommend getting the add-on of the miter gauge because it runs along this linear guide rail on top. It's really well done. It just makes this machine a lot better. I've modified my miter gauge just a little bit. I've added some adhesive back sandpaper to the front along with this Rockler quick clamp. Just makes life a little bit easier. It also does not come with a router. This is a Porter cable router that I've had for at least 10 years now. I started off using this. I hate routers. Routers intimidate me like you wouldn't believe. So I actually upgraded the router to a CNC spindle, which is much, much quieter. Of course, absolutely 100% not necessary. The CNC spindle basically makes no noise when it's spinning. Of course, it still makes noise when it's going through the wood, but compared to a router, it is a night and day difference, and it just makes the router a little bit more approachable for me. Plus, I can talk over it in these videos. Next, we're gonna do fluting. We're gonna cut a bunch of grooves into this board. It's purely decorative. That's an app that's on here. You can use any bit that you want for this. I happen to have a little Cove bit. You tell it the width of your board, you tell it how deep you want those grooves to go, and you tell it how many grooves to cut. So every time you cut a groove, you hit next, it moves over the fence the perfect amount. That looks pretty good. That's a brand new bit, so it just cut through that with ease. So Daniel just said, what happens if you run it the other way too? Look at that. That's a pretty darn cool pattern. We haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do. This next one is called Step and Plunge, which is basically a drilling operation allowing me to use dowel joinery. Because it is spacing those holes perfectly and I got that stop on there, we get a perfect butt peg joint. That was super easy. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this machine can do. I'm gonna show off my favorite feature here in a little bit. I do wanna say that NextWave gave me this machine for this video. They are located about 20 minutes from my house, so I got to go down there and check out their facilities. That being said, they are not paying me and they are not seeing this video before it comes out. I don't give a shit if you buy this machine or not. I benefit in no way from you purchasing this machine. They even offered me an affiliate link to put in the description and I refused. We're actually going to talk about some of my cons here at the end of the video. At the time of this recording, this machine costs $1,700. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but listen to this. My Incra router lift costs $500. My Incra box joint jig costs $205. My Rockler dovetail jig costs $200. My Rockler dovetail fence costs $220. My biscuit joiner costs $142, totaling $1,267. This replaces all of those things, plus all the handmade jigs that I made, and it saves me a lot of time. We're gonna get into the cons and my favorite feature here in a little bit. Here's the thing. Yeah, NextWave gave me this machine to make this video. Don't tell them this, but I would have purchased this with my own money if they didn't. I am absolutely blown away by what this can do. This is going to save me an incredible amount of time and setup, and it just makes the router so much more enjoyable to use. Before I get into the cons, I just want to show you the rest of the apps that are built into this machine. We'll go into our apps. We got our touch plate calibration, we got our biscuit slot, box joint, dado cut, dado repeating, dovetail half blind, dovetail sliding, dovetail through, dovetail test fit, fluting, keyhole, pocket hole, step and plunge, step and repeat, tongue and groove, and the infamous lock miter. I'll be honest with you, I bought a lock miter bit just for this video. I'm too scared to use it. What are you gonna do? Unsubscribe. Here's how I will most use this machine. Not using any of the apps, but just using the home screen here to quickly position the bit and the fence. Let's say I want the bit to be 0.25 inches up. It just moves into that position. I can move my fence to 0.5 inches away from the bit, and it just moves into position. Is that fence a ½ inch from the back edge of the bit, the middle of the bit, or the front of the bit? You get to choose. Right here we have center, front, and back. That is really cool. You can nudge the fence forward and back, same with the lift, and you get to choose how much that nudge is, down to 1/1000 of an inch. It would sound pretty biased if I didn't mention at least a few cons, which to me are pretty minor. Let me show you. The touchscreen is hard to use with your finger. It's not like glass on your phone. It's pressure sensitive, which is what you would find in an industrial environment. A lot of the buttons are kind of small and really close to the bezel. I wish the bezel wasn't so small and further away from the screen. That would make it a little bit easier, and that's why I've been using a pencil throughout this entire video. Even in their own videos, I see them using a pencil for that. A couple things with the box joint app. At the end of the operation, I wish it gave me the option to repeat. It does that in a few of the other apps, but when you're making box joints, I have 4 male operations to do and 4 female operations to do. It's super minor, it's not a big deal, but it could be added in the software. Another thing with the box joint app is you can only do fingers the size of your bit. I think this machine is smart enough to figure out if you have a 1/4 inch bit and you want 3/8 inch fingers, it should be able to do that in multiple passes, just like it does with the dados. I would like to see that added in the software in the future. If you've ever made box joints and put a groove along the bottom to hold a plywood bottom and you cut all the way through, you will know that it leaves a hole at the end there. To get around that, you have to do a plunge onto the bit, go so far, and stop. I think it would be a really cool feature within the Dado app if you could position the board on top of the bit and then just say go, and the bit moves up to its desired height. You pushed it so far and then you hit stop and the bit would go down below the table. You can actually do that, but you have to go outside the app and do it manual. It does have dust collection on top, and then like any router table, you can have dust collection underneath. This guy right here, the big red drive for the fence, it sticks out the back of the table quite a bit. This is with the fence all the way up, and it sticks out about 9 inches. If I push it all the way back, it sticks out 22 inches. That is a price I am willing to pay for all the crazy features this has. I'm gonna have my table up against the wall sideways so I can easily use the miter gauge, and then if I have longer boards, I can easily wheel this out and turn it around. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this thing can do.